Greetings. Let us talk about bougie dilation of an esophageal stricture using a guide wire assisted bougie dilation. And these are my acknowledgements. And today we will learn about the uses of various bougie dilators. But now we will focus on guide wire assisted bougie dilation and how to set it up and how to assist in the procedure. So this is a simple esophageal stricture. This can be dilated with both non-guide wire as well as guide wire assisted bougie dilation. This is again a simple stricture. This is an esophageal web. This could also be dilated with a bougie with or without the assistance of guide wire. This is a complex stricture, and this should not be dilated without the assistance of a guide wire. This requires a guide wire assisted bougie dilation or a balloon dilation. So now that we have learned about bougie dilation, with the help of a wire, it can be used for simple strictures that are short strictures, relatively wide bore, and complex strictures that are longer strictures, angulated strictures, and much more narrow caliber in their lumen. So we will learn about how to set up a Savary dilator, and a Savary dilator comes in a box set up for dilators starting at 21 French, that is the smallest size, and goes up to 60 French. 3 French is equal to 1 millimeter. So 21 French is 7 millimeters. 60 French is 20 millimeter diameter. So you have various sizes of dilators going up by 3 French. So 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, like that until 60 French. And this Savary dilator goes over a Savary Guidewire. This is a metal guide wire, and you need silicone to lubricate the guide wire and for the Savary dilator to move up and down the guide wire easily. You also need a lubricant to lubricate the dilator on the outside so that there's no damage to the esophagus or the mucous membrane. And you need a little bit of gauze to put the lubricant. So let us take a couple of minutes to learn about the Savary Guidewire. So here is a Savary Guidewire. It's a very long guide wire, and as you can see, it has a spring tip, and that is the end that you should give it to the endoscopist. This is an atraumatic end of the guide wire, and that's the one that goes down the biopsy forceps, biopsy channel, down the endoscope into the stomach. And you also see some markings there, and we will learn about what those markings mean. So you have the spring tip, and from the spring tip you see 2 marks, then 3 marks, then 4 marks, then 5 marks, etc. So these marks, each mark is set at 20 centimeters from the end of the guide wire, from the spring tip end of the guide wire. So if you see 2 marks, that is 40 centimeters, 3 marks, 60 centimeters, 4 marks, 80 centimeters, 5 marks, 100 centimeters, like that. It's very important to keep that thing in mind. And when you see on the guide wire close to the mouth, there are 3 marks. That means the guide wire is at 60 centimeters and the tip is 60 centimeters down in the gastrointestinal tract. And that's how you figure out how to keep the Savary guide wire in a constant position without allowing it to slip out of the position inside the GI tract. So keeping these marks, knowing what the marks mean is very important. So how do we go about doing a Savary dilation? We do an endoscopy and you give the spring tip end of the guide wire. You lubricate the guide wire and give it to the endoscopist, and the endoscopist gently inserts it through the biopsy port, down the channel, through the stricture and into the antrum. If fluoroscopy is used, he wants to make sure the guide wire is in the antrum, and that's how you insert the guide wire into the stomach. Once the guide wire is inserted in the stomach, you gently remove the endoscope while keeping the guide wire in place. That is done by the endoscopist. So you remove the endoscope, keeping the guide wire in place, either by checking the fluoroscopy or for an experienced endoscopist, as he pulls the scope out, he moves the guide wire in about the same amount of distance so that the guide wire does not slip out. So once the guide wire is in the antrum and has gone through the stricture down the stomach into the antrum, you start the Savary dilation. So it's very important for the endoscopist and the assistant to stay away from the patient in a relatively straight line so that you can keep the wire at a fixed distance. And it's very important to stabilize the guide wire and confirm the position. If you're doing with fluoroscopy, you can check the fluoroscopy and see if the spring tip is in the antrum or not. If not, the endoscopist will make some adjustments. If the fluoroscopy is not there, how do you know whether the guide wire is still inside or has slipped out or slipped in too much? You go and check the marks on the guide wire close to the mouth. And here you can see there are 3 marks, and we have learned that each mark is 20 centimeters. 3 marks is equal to 60 centimeters. So 60 centimeters in an adult equals to that the guide wire is certainly in the stomach or maybe close to the antrum. We know that in an adult of an average height, it takes about 35 to 40 centimeters to the GE junction, and another, depending upon the size of the adult, another 15-20 centimeters to the antrum. So important to keep this thing in mind. And then you lubricate the end of the Savary tip with a silicone oil, and that way the dilator can slip on the Savary wire easily. So the next step is lubricating the guide wire tip with a little bit of silicone. And you must keep the wire straight without loops. Make sure you hold on to the end of the wire at a fixed distance that you started, and you pass the dilator and avoid wire slippage. That's critical for an assistant. You should not allow the wire to slip in or slip out, and keep that wire relatively straight so that the dilator moves over the guide wire easily. As the dilator comes closer to the stomach, you take the lubricant, put it on a piece of gauze and apply to the tip of the dilator so that the dilator goes down well lubricated into the mouth and down the esophagus. And the endoscopist gently passes the dilator while the endoscopist and the assistant secures the wire. Securing the wire is pretty simple in Savary dilation. Hold on to the wire, stand where you are, and keep that wire at that same place. And once the endoscopist dilates the stricture, while the wire is stabilized, he will remove the dilator, and that's how the procedure is done. If he wants to dilate further, he will go to the next size. So say for example, you started with the 21 French. The next dilator should be the next size, not something that you hold on, you pick at random, some 21 to 24 French. Once 24 French goes, then you give 27 French. So every time a dilation is done, you should go by incremental increase in the size depending upon depending upon what was dilated before. So the endoscopist will decide how far he wants to go in terms of the maximum dilator that he would use before he does a quits. So let us see what happens when the dilator is going down into the esophagus and stricture. So as we dilate, the key for an assistant is to stabilize the wire and not to allow it to slip out or slip in. And the wire can perforate if you allow it to slip in too much. If the wire slips out too much, then it is almost like a non-wire guided dilation, and the dilator can perforate. So in Savary dilation, it's very important to secure the wire and keep it at the same place. If it is at 60 centimeters just outside the mouth, that mark should not move from the beginning of the first dilation till the end before you pull the wire out. So, having said that, you have the wire securely placed, the dilator moves, dilates, and then at the end of the procedure, the wire and the dilator are pulled out together, and the endoscopist will decide and wants to check. You get your endoscope ready, and he wants to see if there's a tear, and if there is a tear, he will hold off further dilation. If there's no tear, he may say, maybe we should dilate a little more, and the endoscopist will make that decision. As an endoscopy assistant, it is critical to do a few things. Make sure you arrange your dilators sequentially. You pick the right dilator, lubricate with silicone oil at the tip of the dilator, and once the dilator is coming close to the mouth, lubricate the tip of the dilator with lubricant. Hold on to the wire, secure the wire, keep the wire in the same position without allowing it to slip in or slip out. I hope this is useful. Thank you.